D-May, Svingen and Donick, 1025, 1063 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, and Adam Vingan here with you on a frigid day in Nashville, Tennessee. I imagine it's just as cold where Willie is north of the border. I presume you're in Ottawa, Willie.
I am in Ottawa. Yes, indeed. The capital city
So,
of the nation of Canada.
so tell me, what are you looking at this present moment? Are you looking at mountains? Are you just looking at a bunch of snow? Or are you just looking outside knowing damn well it is freezing out there?
Well, I'm looking outside from the 16th floor, and we are in this area that would remind you of the movie Office Space. In fact, I can't 100% prove that the movie Office Space was not filmed where we are in relation. So we're not in downtown Ottawa, which is really cool. I got a chance to stay there the last couple of years. But this is where we stay from time to time because it's a little easier to get to the arena, which is sort of out in the suburbs. Right now, Ottawa is working on building a downtown arena in the coming years. It is 20 degrees right now, but my phone also says feels like 7. So that's fun. So I'm looking at a lot of snow, a lot of flat area, but a lot of just like corporate office space surrounding me.
Maybe there's an Initech somewhere over there.
I'm looking for the building that says Initech. There's a lot of buildings that look exactly like the Initech building. It hasn't been blown to smithereens or like it was in the movie, but a spoiler alert, by the way. But that's a great movie that still holds up.
Yes. Let me know if you see Bill Lumberg around. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go ahead and disagree with you there.
That's not the guy that you want to be your boss.
No,
Bill
absolutely
Lumberg.
not. You do not want a Bill Lumberg for a boss. But last night, another rough game for the Nashville Predators. They fall 3-0 to the Montreal Canadiens. Their winless streak has now reached 6 consecutive games, 3 regulation losses, 3 overtime losses. And quite frankly, gentlemen, when I look at this season as a whole, and there have been a lot of losses this season, obviously. To me,
that's another movie line for you.
To me,
Slapshot.
Yes. To me, this was the most indefensible of all of the losses this season. I know scoring has been an issue. It continues to be an issue. Willie, you have pointed out correctly that the Predators have played some tough competition lately. They played the Jets at home. They went on the road to face the New Jersey Devils. They played the Lightning, Wild, and Maple Leafs in consecutive games, dropping all of those games. The Canadiens are not in that category. The Canadiens are record-wise just as bad as you are. And you played worse than they did last night. So I don't want to sound like a broken record. And Willie, I know, and I was watching the post-game show with you and Chris Mason, and it certainly has to feel like Groundhog Day every time you're talking about the Predators' lack of scoring. But I thought this was a game that could be used as that sort of get-right game for the Predators. You're playing an opponent that record-wise is on your level, a team that has struggled, especially defensively. You know, the Canadiens are certainly not a defensive juggernaut, but I thought in many ways the Canadiens took it to the Predators. You know, I think the shot totals were inflated by the fact that the Predators had multiple power play opportunities. They went 0 for 5 on the power play. They had at least one section of 5-on-3 power play time in the third period to get back into the game. They were unable to take advantage of it. But, you know, as I sit here, I'm running out of ways. I sound like maybe this is just the dad in me coming out, but I'm starting to run out of ways to tell our listeners how disappointed I am in the Predators.
Before you say that, Willie, I do want to say this. This back-to-back didn't do any justice for the Predators. It really didn't. This is a team that had already been struggling. Yeah, they won a game, but it seemed like they take a step forward, then they take 2 steps back. So I'm not sure what that game last night represented as a whole for this team, But I tell you this, when you're not a good team and you're struggling, back-to-backs don't help. And it looked like it last night.
Yeah, and look, I'm not. I can't excuse that they don't score a goal against Montreal. They did get in. It was a tough back to back. To your point, D Mace. There was a delay in the travel, and this happens to all the teams at some point during the season. So you can't use it as an excuse. And it'd be easy to use it as an excuse if you were in the middle of a season where you're in decent shape, but they didn't get in till super late. But put that aside, it's another example of exactly the same thing we've been talking about, where they get enough chances to score goals. Adam, you've pointed to the shot quality and everything like that. Our discussion with Elliott, those adjustments that they've made, it has equated to better numbers. But I don't think I've ever seen a team as baffled offense. The other thing that happened last night, if people didn't watch the game, is they lost Ryan O'Reilly, and he's going to be out from week to week. He'll be out for a while. So that is another glue guy that they lose at a position where they're already the weakest. That's at center, right? So now they lose him, and this is why they struggle. But yet they had plenty of chances to score. The puck just isn't going in the net for all of these reasons that we've tried to put our finger on. That maybe it's a little bit of bad puck luck. They're thinking about it too much. They're obviously low on confidence. They've got no swagger. When you go to Toronto and Montreal, you have people in the media that don't just follow their own team. Like, they follow the whole league. They know how big of a story it is that Nashville is in the position that they're in. And they're all baffled. They're like, Nyquist, and go down the line, be last in the league in scoring. Nobody can figure out how this is happening. And it was another example last night. They just can't get one to go when they need to, and they fall behind, and they can't crawl their way out of the hole. So it was another very tough loss in a series of tough losses. I think Andrew Brunette kind of looked at it and he said, "This is the next chapter in the sort of the same story right now."
When I was looking at some of the numbers behind last night's game, there was one thing that when I saw it this morning, Willie, my eyes bulged out of my head. What was one thing we talked a lot about at the beginning of the season that the Predators were struggling with? Giving up odd man rushes. That was a big part of the story early in the season. Last night, Montreal, in terms of odd man rushes, 14-1. The Montreal Canadiens had 14 odd man rushes last night. And there are dynamic players on the Montreal Canadiens. Cole Caulfield, Patrick Laine's return to the lineup after getting injured in the preseason. He scored in both of his games. They do have dynamic players, but the Montreal Canadiens overall are not a good team. And to see the Canadiens have that sort of advantage at odd man rushes, it was 15-4 in terms of scoring chances off the rush, 14-1 odd man rushes. I mean, that to me, Derek, to your point, like I and I was listening to Elliot Freeman this morning on the 32 Thoughts podcast, and he said on the podcast a lot of the same things he said to us yesterday. But he said, I don't know how you can't look at these two games against the Maple Leafs and the Canadiens and not see a setback, as to your point, for the Predators.
Yeah, it's to me, I do know from a physical standpoint, a mental standpoint, how taxing it can be. Because we played on a Sunday and had to come back and play on a Thursday, and I know it's not a back-to-back, but in the football world, that's damn near a back-to-back, because days are taken away from you that you had either for preparation or rest, and you don't get it when you play Sunday and Thursday. So from that standpoint, the fatigue is there. But how many times, and like you said, Willie, you can't use that as an excuse, but how many times are you going to, whether it's a back-to-back or if it's a game on a Tuesday, then you got another game on a Thursday, how many times you're going to use that as an excuse? If in order to try to go on this run that we hope they can go on, but it looks day by day and game by game that run is nowhere to be found and it's not going to show up. How many times can you continue to do this until the fan base just looks at it as if this is a lost season? And again, I go back to the moves that you're making to try to get a jump start. And we've discussed this ad nauseum, and I understand you can't bench anybody, but you got to do something. And Adam brought up a story to me right before we got on air about, a team having to cut a captain.
We will discuss
and we'll get
this
into that
a little bit later.
Exactly.
But Jacob Trouba, the captain of the New York Rangers, we'll get into it a little bit later. But the plan is that I think there are teams that might reportedly trade for him, but he might get waived as a workaround in his trade clause. But we will talk more about that in a little bit.
But that's a different, I know those circumstances are different, but when you see a team like that that's struggling and they're trying to do something to jumpstart, or they're trying to do something to change their fortune, and you look at Nashville and you think, all right, the things that y'all have done to try to, get a kickstart, there hadn't been big things. And I understand that, some things you can't do, but some things you still can do within the parameters that you have. Whether it be ice time or something else, you have to be able to do something, and everybody has to be on board. Just like I said last week, if you're going to make moves like that, taking ice time away, you need to go to your captain and let him know, hey, these are the things that I'm thinking about doing moving forward. Everybody needs to be on board. If you can get the captain on board, then everybody else sort of falls in line. But to me, if there's going to be some type of change, and it needs to start like yesterday. If there's going to be some type of change, you need some type of, shake up that everybody feels, not just one individual, but everybody in the organization feels.
I do think they're not going to stand by and do nothing. I think that's for sure. Something is going to happen. You are limited what you can do with salary cap stuff, and I think the cap is related somewhat to the Rangers situation there with Trouba. But and the Rangers and the Predators both are in a position where they don't have a ton of cap space if you wanted to make some wholesale changes. But I'm just going to track what Barry Trotz has been saying. He's put Christmas out there, and he said he's got young players that he likes, and you may see more of them if they can't dig out of the hole, which continues to get deeper and deeper. With regards to the back-to-back, I would say let's not put it on the rest as much as I think the O'Reilly thing was a bigger factor last night. The odd man rushes were big. That's really where Montreal got all of their offense. But Justus Anonen, I thought gave them a great chance to win. So how did they get the goals? They got a shorthanded goal on a bad turnover by Jonathan Marchessault, which he owned after the game. A blind pass while they're on the power play that gets intercepted and taken down for a goal. And they gave up a 5-on-3 goal where they took a penalty late in the second period that carried over. Alex Carrier broke his stick on blocking a shot and then had to stand there in front of Patrick Laine without a stick, and Laine made a great shot. And you have no margin for error when you don't score, right? If you win the game 4-2, you look back and say, yeah, pretty good game. You held them to 2. But there's a lot of other areas where the Predators were the better team against the Canadiens. But it comes down to the same thing. I think they fixed a lot of the problems, but they cannot, when the time comes to make the play and put the puck in the net, they're not making the play. And these are guys who have huge track records of scoring goals. And I struggle why, who to blame, who to say that the reason is they are just stuck in the mud. It's really hard to watch right now. I feel for those guys.
Adam in Portland is on our phone line, driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com. Adam, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Yeah, man. Hey, I think it's wild, man. One of the couple of things I keep hearing that I'm getting so sick of hearing is we don't know why this is the way it is. And also, these guys had an opportunity to go back to their places. Their other teams really wanted them. If they really wanted them, man, they would have been there. Like, why would you risk it all at a place where you're already highly doubted? Everybody knows you, and that's been working. If they really wanted you, they would have kept you. It's the same. Like, it's just bad players. If it's bad, I'm not saying these guys are bad players. I'm saying at this stage in their career, right now, they're bad players. I mean, it's what it is. It looks like bad hires, which would be a Barry Trotz problem. Like, I swear, I heard somebody say that if it was, he's going to hang on to Burnett because he was a coach, so he's got a soft spot for. That's stupid, dude. Like, if that's the case, then you are a bad GM. It's either a bad GM or bad coach. But these players, it's not like McDavid wouldn't come in here and score, dude. He would score in that offense. So I got a problem thinking that these guys are on the same level as the elite players in the league. I think it was bad pickups, dude. We all got overhyped and sold a bag of junk this offseason. That's all.
Adam, thank you for the call. Before we answer that, Scott is in Hendersonville on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Scott, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Well, I was just wondering, the speculation was a week or two ago, especially when they cut Fabro, that they were trying to clear cap space to get a second line center. And now with O'Reilly going down, they need a center worse than ever. But, it now looks like the season is a loss. I mean, what do you think they try to pick up a center, maybe somebody Mikael Granlund-ish, or do they just play for a high draft pick?
Thanks, Scott. It's a good question.
It is the question. I think
it is the question because
as you get to Christmas time, I think that's becoming the question.
Yeah, I mean, look, to Adam's call, I hear what he's saying about the players they brought in, and the Predators were widely considered the winners of the NHL offseason. Now, we know in sports, just because you quote unquote win the offseason doesn't mean that those are going to translate to actual wins. But with Stamkos specifically, and then we'll go to break. But with Stamkos specifically, there were signs that he was becoming a diminishing player at 5-on-5 over his final seasons with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Yes, he did score 40 goals last season. I believe 19 of them were on the power play. You knew that he was going to continue to be a top power play performer. The question I had was, and I said this many times, how much of a drop-off in production should we expect from Steven Stamkos, considering that the quality of his line mates is going to significantly diminish? He's not going to be playing with Braden Point anymore. He's not going to be playing with Nikita Kucherov anymore. And I think it's a confluence of factors. I think that Barry Trotz did Steven Stamkos no favors by not acquiring a center that could keep up with him. Tommy Novak, you mentioned Ryan O'Reilly, Willie. This would have been the perfect opportunity for Tommy Novak to get in the lineup and prove his worth as a center. They need centers. Where was Tommy Novak last night? In the press box. That reflects poorly on Tommy Novak. It also reflects poorly on Barry Trotz. And we're going to talk about Barry Trotz coming up next, because this is the first true test for Barry Trotz as general manager of the Nashville Predators. We'll take your thoughts. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game.
Happy Friday, everyone. This is Derek Mason, and you heard me tell you about Dr. Logic and his staff at Cool Springs MD for some time. If you set out to lose weight, chances are it's not your first time setting a resolution to shed some extra pounds only to face disappointment. But at Cool Springs MD, Dr. Logic and his team understands the frustration of this cycle, and that is why they offer a different approach to weight loss. You got to come at it from a different angle, people. And Cool Springs MD and Dr. Lodge are the perfect people for that different angle, such as their comprehensive weight loss program, which is led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific to you and no one else. So connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
Looking for a great gift to give to someone for Christmas this season? You should check out some of the Nashville's best deals at theGameNashville.com/deals. Right now, you can purchase half off on gift cards for Princess Hot Chicken, Bavarian Beer House, Fat Bottom Brewing, Black Rabbit, Staley Chicago Italian Dining, Teddy's Tavern, and much more. Go to theGameNashville.com/deals right now and get your Christmas shopping done. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. I do want to finish my thought quickly on Steven Stamkos because I felt like I left it incomplete there. My point was that there were signs of Steven Stamkos declining at 5-on-5, and I talked about the reasons why. But even in our worst case scenarios, and Willie, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, even in our worst case scenarios, we did not expect this. This exceeds our worst case scenarios with Steven Stamkos specifically. I know the team as a whole, but to Adam's call about the players they brought in, I think the worst case scenarios for all three of them, meaning Marchessault and Shea as well, have all been exceeded.
Oh, I think by beyond our wildest dreams. I think that to your point, Adam, I do think it was a very fair thing, and I will give Ray Ferraro credit for sort of being the first to ask this question in the summer in the aftermath of them signing those guys. Was they didn't go get a center, and the center was probably if you were to start listing reasons why they couldn't quite break through against the Canucks last year in the playoffs, the center position and how Tommy Novak sort of got exploited. That was a big reason in a series that was razor, edge as far as how close it was. Every single game was. So Barry Trotz was looking at that. If I have another dynamic goal scorer or two that can make a big play in a tight playoff game, that's what will put us through. And so that's the direction he took. It made a lot of sense at the time. But Ray Ferraro said, okay, Steven Stamkos is a left-hand shot. Jonathan Marchessault is a left-hand shot. Philip Forsberg is a left-hand shot. Will those pieces all fit? And I never played hockey on any level to really be able to tell you how important that is or is not. But a lot of people tell me that is something that was a thing that would make the puzzle a little tougher to put together than people might realize, instead of just like listing great players on a fantasy team and saying, this is your team and it's all going to work out. The pieces do have to fit. And Barry Trotz, to his credit, did say, on a recent interview with Jared there, said, the blame has got to be spread everywhere, right? I don't think Steven Stamkos or Brady Shea or Jonathan Marchessault would ever have dreamed that they could play this ineffectively or would have this little production at this stage, regardless of any excuse you want to make for them or they want to make for themselves. So that's that. Barry Trotz, I think, does have to shoulder some of the blame, which he did. And the coaches have to do that as well. But it is spread throughout everybody. I don't think it's one guy.
And I understand what you're saying, Willie. But I think, at least from my standpoint, I understand you're saying, well, they brought in left-hand shooters, and they're asking them to play different, on different sides of the ice, left-hander to be a right-hand shooter. I understand all this stuff, but these are things that you knew coming in prior. To me, I look at this from the standpoint of, listen, we hoped that they would finally click. We hoped that there would be a game or a series of games where they finally get it and they finally find the right lines. But it hasn't been the case. And a lot of it probably is that guys are playing out of position and they're still trying to get used to playing in this position that they're in. So to me, the season, I can't see them. Now, if they go on a run and they prove me wrong, then great. I would love for that to happen. But I think this season is a wash. I really do. I think this was sort of the test season for all of these guys being on the ice at the same time. You hoped that it would work out great because you got these, 40-plus goal scorers. But in actuality, it's an experiment. An experiment has went completely wrong thus far. So it's almost like you gotta, you got to jump to next season. You got to jump to the off season. You got to figure out, what do I need to do moving forward with this roster to try to make it more of the roster that I want to put on the ice. Get these guys that I brought in, because these guys are not signed to 1-year deals. These guys are signed to multiple year deals.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to figure out how to use these guys, because, so you can't trade them. So you're going to have to figure out within the next 18 months or probably 9 months to figure out how you're going to reorganize these lines and make sure that when, that these guys are in the best position to be successful. And that may not happen this year. This may be a next year thing for the Nashville Predators, because again, that's like bringing in a rush in that used to play inside backer, a right tackle, a left tackle that used to play right tackle, and you're trying to figure all this out, and you're trying to hope that you put them in this new position and it works out, but it's an experiment. And usually the second season is the season where it seems like everything just comes together. So for me, and only me, I don't see a run coming nowhere. And I think they need to start preparing in the background for next season or the off season to try to figure out, how do we get the most out of these guys that we brought in that are signed to 4, 5, 6 year contracts.
Tim is
got a
on.
caller, Adam?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure. I just wanted to give you the breathing room to make a point, but we will
No,
go to.
I think the reality is getting closer that it may not be fixable this year, and that brings up also another question of how do you fix it for next year, given all of the draft capital they have, all of the prospects they have. These are the questions coming forward.
Tim is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Tim, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey, guys, I always enjoy the show. Look, I have it figured out. I know the problem with the Predators. Will Levis is going over and knocking somebody in the head and taking their uniform and playing, and that's why the whole thing's screwed up.
If only that were true, Tim. But
well, I mean, hey, they're playing like Levis, aren't they?
Well, playing like,
they might be playing a little worse than Levis right about now.
They're playing like pre-injury Will Levis, perhaps.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
yes, Tim, thank you for the
Right,
call. But yes,
Well, let's use an example here. You talked about Stamkos, and I don't want to put all this on Stamkos.
no, but as the primary
Stamkos, yeah, he was
player
the
that was
headliner,
yes.
right? He is going to be in the Hall of Fame. He is going to be in the Hall of Fame in Toronto. He was just in Toronto. He had a game where he had no shots on goal. Then Ryan O'Reilly gets hurt against Toronto. Steven Stamkos was playing number 1 center last night. He didn't play a bad game. I thought early on he struggled a little bit in the faceoff circle. He started coming around. But here is really, I think, sort of to try to put your finger on what's happening. Early in the game, he gets the puck dead low slot. He's one of the greatest shooters of his generation. He's got a great look. Missed the net. Later in the game, like you said, Adam, the Montreal converted on a 5-on-3. Patrick Laine, who hasn't played since December of last year. It's his second game back. He's got 2 games. He's got 2 goals. Makes a perfect shot. Upper corner. It was absolutely perfect. Steven Stamkos has had hundreds of goals in his career where that's been the case. I had a perfect person tweet me after the game. It's like, why can't they get the puck to Stamkos more in the wheelhouse? Well, they did get it to him. Maybe not 4 or 5 times, but there was once on that flank where they got it to him. It's right in the pocket. He missed the net. That's just what's happening right now. Philip Forsberg is leading the NHL in shots that are missing the net. So I struggle with, so why is that? Like the coach's job is to put the guys in position to make the play, right? But it's astonishing how guys who have 40-goal seasons, huge accolades as goal scorers throughout their whole career, none of them are having, it's not just that none of them are having good seasons, none of them are even close to average with their season. Philip Forsberg, after a pretty decent start, now got 1 goal in his last 12 games. So, it's just, I don't know what you do. They're there, they're in position, but they're not making any plays, like 0 plays.
Michael's on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Michael, thank you for calling. Please go ahead. Michael, are you there?
How gentlemen doing?
Good, thank you.
I don't know. I'm kind of halfway, especially after last night's game, as frustrating as it was to watch them lose 3-0. We're at 30 games into the season.
Nearing
Ish,
that point,
30-ish.
yes. Yes.
30-ish points. So the way
That's
I see
about
it,
a third
we
of the way
still
through is what you can say.
Yeah, we still got 50-something games, 40-something games to still play. I'm at the point I don't want to give up just yet, but I'm at the point that we're not producing anything that I want to give up. But looking at the standings, we're only 5 games. We're 10 points away from a wild card spot, which is only 5 wins. 5 wins away, and I don't know. Is it wrong of me to think that maybe if we can just get on a 5-game win streak, and they're like, oh man, we're back into playoff hunt. We're right there. Maybe that sparks something, and they can get going, and we can get on a run, or not even a run. Maybe find some fight in this team that I know we can have.
Michael, let me ask you a quick question. I appreciate your optimism. It's rare right now. Have the Predators this season given you any indication that they are capable of doing that?
I would have to say not since the game against Winnipeg, but our win against Winnipeg is kind of what gave me that little shimmer of hope to think that our season could still be saved.
And I hear that. Thank you for the call, Michael. I appreciate Michael's optimism.
It is a fair question to ask, and I think that's what Barry Trotz probably has to wrestle with at this point, because if I think you could make a case that they could start playing really well. That they can't. These goal scorers with their track record, it's bound to turn around at some point. And you do have a goalie that can rip off a lot of wins. And I was very encouraged with Onninen's performance last night too.
The goaltending has been the least of their concerns.
Right.
So you would,
and I've been harping on the fact that since they've made some tweaks in the system, they are doing much better in the analytic battle, which in the first 10 or 12 games, when they initially sunk down in the standings, that was a big problem.
Yes. And Will, you know that I am a believer in those numbers, just like you are, but I'm at the point where it's got to translate to wins. I mean, 20. I believe in it, but
look, they are so low right now. It's hard. They would have to go on and they went 16-0-2 last year.
Right, but what are the statistical odds of that happening again?
Well, very low. But I think you have to be realistic and say, am I going to try to move mountains and do something drastic and trade away potential future assets to try to make a run this year? That's probably not smart, right? It's probably more, well, if it happens, it happens, but let's also have a little bit more of an eye on the big picture and what you want to do and what can you do to continue to make little things and just hope that it gets better. I'll give you another indicator of how it's going. Last night, they get an early power play. They go on the man advantage. They feed the puck to Gus Nyquist. Gus Nyquist had a tremendous season last year. True? Gus Nyquist is now on the first power play, replacing Ryan O'Reilly.
Yes, he had a career year last season at an
75
advanced
points
age for a hockey player.
Everything went right for him last year. This year, he is not the same player. Even though he just made Team Sweden, good for him. It's not going his way this year. So what happens? They get him the puck in the perfect scoring area, between the circles, in the slot, right where you want to go. He has a one-timer. It goes off the heel of his stick. Doesn't get on net. Puck goes to the corner. Jonathan Marchessault gets it, throws a blind pass back towards the point where he thinks Roman Josi is. It's intercepted, taken down for a shorthanded goal. So these are the things that are happening that last year it was the flip side, right? And so all of you in they got to change the coach, the system. That's not the system. That's the coach. That's not the coach. These are players not making plays that are there. So I'm not putting it all on the players. I'm not excusing any responsibility from Andrew Brunette. I'm not excusing Barry Trotz. It's just everything that can go wrong, other than the goaltending, has gone horribly wrong. You mentioned Tommy Novak. you were thinking, well, maybe Tommy Novak, just if you give him what he's been giving you, you're no worse than having a good, sneaky source of offense as your third line center, even if he can't handle the second line center. He's not doing that. He's been a complete zero, invisible. He got 1 assist on the season. That was unthinkable going into the year.
6-1.
So what is that? Is that the coach? It's the same coach. It's the same player. It's the same system. How does that happen? I don't know.
I guess my response to that before we go to break would be, I hear what you're saying, but like, I mean, it's happening across the board among the skaters. We're excusing the goaltenders in this because I don't think the goaltenders have been the issue. If Gus Nyquist was having all of this happen to him and he was the only one, or if it was Gus Nyquist and Steven Stamkos and everybody else was fine. We're seeing Roman Josi heat up a little bit offensively lately. The board are having issues. If it was 1 or 2, but it seems like the primary players, the top players, it's across the board. And that's just something that's hard for me to ignore. And we can pick this up on the other side. 615-737-1025. We'll continue to take your calls and text. I do want to get to the Barry Trotz of it all because this is a big moment for Barry Trotz. We'll do that next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063 The Game. D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, and Adam Vingan here with you talking Predators. They lose last night 3-0 to the Montreal Canadiens. That is 6 consecutive losses. A winless streak, as the NHL calls it, because there were some overtime losses in there, but it is 6 consecutive losses. This is going to be the first true test of the Barry Trotz administration. When he returned to the organization a couple of years ago, in an advisory role for David Poile, as David Poile was transitioning toward retirement, people were so happy to have Barry back in the organization. We all know Barry Trotz. He is a great ambassador of this city. I often say, if you don't like Barry Trotz, there's something wrong with you. There's not something wrong with him. He's great to talk to, but everything he did or had a hand in early on, it all worked out, right? The trades they made a couple of years ago to start the sell-off process, trading Ryan Johansson, buying out Matt Duchene, bringing in Ryan O'Reilly and Gus Nyquist. They both had great years last season. Everything he seemed to touch turned to gold, no pun intended. But this is the first true test. We are starting to see it. We see it on our text line. We hear it on the phone calls. We are starting to get Barry Trotz is starting to generate a lot of heat. And I heard what Elliot Freeman said with us yesterday about how maybe the best thing for the Predators and Barry Trotz to do is just to take a deep breath. But I can see it as I monitor the text line. I hear it in your voices when you call in. You're running out of patience with Barry Trotz. That's just the name of the game. We did have one texter who mentioned it's weird that every Preds player is having bad luck, quote unquote, but Philip Tomasino seemed to kick his bad luck as soon as he went to another team. And you know who else is playing well since he went to another team? Dante Fabro. Now, it's more complicated than just saying, well, he's not on the Predators anymore, so now he's good. But it's not a good look. It's not a good look that Dante Fabro and Philip Tomasino early on with the Blue Jackets and Penguins, respectively, are thriving when they couldn't perform well here. That's another knock, rightly or wrongly, against Barry Trotz. And as I said, I understand what Elliot said yesterday about the Predators and Barry Trotz taking a deep breath. We alluded to this earlier in the show. And Willie, if I'm getting the facts wrong in this, you can interrupt me at any point. So the news broke today that the New York Rangers are moving on from their captain, Jacob Trouba. Now, this is something they tried to do over the summertime when he had a no movement clause that was transitioning into a modified partial no trade clause. Right. They tried to get rid of him. He exercised his contractual right not to get traded. But now it appears that if he doesn't accept a trade, they are going to put him on waivers because a no trade clause does not protect you from being waived. A no movement clause protects you from being waived. Before you call or text and say the Predators should do that to Roman Josi, they can't because he has a no movement clause. He cannot be waived. And I wouldn't even.
I don't think anybody was calling for that.
I know, but I guarantee you that someone would hear that and go, well, they should do that with Josi. I'm cutting it off at the pass. But Peter Laviolette, who is now the head coach of the New York Rangers, had this quote when explaining the Jacob Trouba situation. We're not playing well right now. When you're not having the success you want on the ice, there has to be a direction that moves differently. So this is the decision I made. And keep in mind, the New York Rangers won the President's Trophy last season. They won 55 games. They had the greatest season in their storied history in the regular season. They've gone to the conference final 2 of the past 3 years. And this is what they're doing. And I can understand Predators fans saying, why aren't the Predators doing something like this? Where's the big move? This is the unacceptable outcome, and therefore you're going to be reprimanded type move. And I understand not wanting to do something drastic because you don't want to make a mistake. As Elliot Freeman says, they're not throwing you a life preserver. They're throwing you an anvil. But Willie, I can completely understand Predators fans being upset that it appears that Barry Trotz is not doing anything to show his team that their start is unacceptable.
Well, it doesn't mean he's not trying. I think he's trying to do some things for sure. I think they are absorbed they're engulfed in this every day. Barry Trotz and the coaching staff trying to fix it every day. It's killing them. There's no doubt in my mind. The Trouba thing, you just sort of mentioned it. This is something they wanted to do before the season started. They wanted to move on from Jacob Trouba. Only his no trade clause blocked them from doing it before. So the quote from Lavi is interesting to me because he's sort of taking it on him when I think it's really a bigger issue is they need to move his $8 million salary to be able to make some moves, the Rangers. They can't really do anything to speak of, just kind of like the Predators. They can't do a whole lot right now with their salary situation unless they trade salary. So that's what the Rangers are trying to do is get somebody to take Trouba. And I think what will happen is he will be waived and they will pray that somebody grabs it. But who would take that $8 million salary? Trouba's not worth $8 million at this stage of his career. And it's this year and next year that you're on the hook for. So that's a pickle that the Rangers are in. And it also sounds a whole lot like the Kyle Turris situation. The difference is the Predators at the time did have the ability to bury Turris' salary, which they're still paying, by the way. It's interesting we're in Ottawa right now. But, Adam, you covered that, and that was a sticky situation before where a player who once was a really good player, who earned a big contract, is no longer that player, and the coach has to make a tough call. Like, I think I'm better off with somebody else in there. That's basically in a mini stage what happened to Dante Fabro. It wasn't that they didn't think Dante Fabro wasn't a decent NHL player. He's a decent NHL player and will be for a long time. I'm very happy for him that he's doing well in Columbus. But at his number, they had other guys like Willsby and Delgado that were cheaper and basically just as effective.
Matt is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Matt, thank you for waiting. Please go ahead.
Hey, it's Matt from 757. So, just a couple of quick points that I want to try to make here, guys, and I'll get it out as quickly as I can. Adam, I loved your work when you were working for The Athletic. Very analytical. I love the data and the way that you come with facts and stuff, and all of that to say that I just, as a fan, as a guy who's been watching this team for 25 years, but who also looks at the rest of the league, I just go back to something that you had wrote in one of your articles. Essentially, you would close out a season by saying, until the Nashville Predators are willing to be bad with the hopes that one day they will be good, nothing is going to change. And all of these moves that Barry Trotz has made, they feel like David Poile 2.0. It all feels like they're just trying to plug little holes here and there. They're trying to do this, they're trying to do that. But never in the 25-year history of this team have they been willing to do the thing that we look around the league and we see. And I know that I hear, like, you know, the contrary coming from a lot of people, but I just, as a fan, that's how I feel. And to mirror one additional thing that I'm heartbroken about is I hate watching Juuse Saros waste away on this team. I know he wants to be here and everything, but I'm like a lot of Nashville Predators fans. I love Pekka Rinne. I've got a closet full of sweaters from Pekka Rinne. It breaks my heart to think that Juuse Saros is going to be wasted on this team long term. I wish, in a complete love for Juuse Saros, I wish the guy could go somewhere and go to a competitor and help them win the Stanley Cup. And back in December of 2022, and I know the guy is kind of a lightning rod in the league, but Mark Lazarus had wrote, hey, Chicago, it could be worse. You could be the Nashville Predators. And 2 years on, and it just feels like nothing has really changed. So
well, hold on. But I've got some questions for you. That's because it's a great call that you had, and I love it. It's obvious that you follow this every day. But
every day, Willie.
So let's start with the Blackhawks. Where are they right now? They just fired their coach.
Sure.
How far are they from winning right now?
Well, Willie, I think the difference in the Blackhawks is that they have a generational talent that they are going to work to build around, and in Connor Bedard, I would say absolutely.
I'd say he has regressed in the second year.
His
But okay,
former
let's-
coach,
let's-
his former coach, did not do him any favors this season. Luke Richardson played a big role in the issues that Connor
Okay.
Bedard is having.
So, but
go ahead.
let's
Right.
grant that he's a franchise player. Okay, so
Mhm.
let's now take how far they are and what they had to do to get him. They have not been good generously since 2020, and really since the Predators beat them in the playoffs in 2017. They
Sure.
haven't done anything, right? So we're getting close to a decade of them being fairly irrelevant on this rebuild, right? So are you willing to go through a decade for the Predators before they even make the playoffs again?
Hey, Matt, quickly
I
answer
mean-
this, and then we've got to go to break.
Sure. Yeah, Willie, I mean, I would say that, like, I hear all the conversations about teams that are rebuilding, about Buffalo and stuff like that. And my response is always, well, I've watched 25 years of Nashville Predators hockey, and they've only gotten past the second round one time. I mean, it's always going to be a gamble. Like, no one is saying that if you are willing to be bad and do a rebuild, that's going to guarantee you a Stanley Cup. But it is what the rest of the league does in order to increase their chances. You still have to have the right coach, the right general manager, the right development team. And I would say that for the Nashville Predators organization, I'm a thumbs down on basically the entire thing right now, with the exception of the goaltending.
Matt, I don't want to cut you off just because we do have to go to break, but great call. I want to unpack a lot of what Matt talked about.
Yeah.
So we'll do that on the
I'd
other
love for Matt
side.
to call back. Let's continue to have this conversation.
615-73.
It's a great philosophical question.
Yes, it
for
is.
sure.
We'll unpack that on the other side. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063 The Game. D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, and Adam Vingan here with you. Ask D-Mace coming up at around 12:30. So if you've got questions for Derek, you can text them to us now at 615-737-1025. You can also call in around 12:30 for Ask D-Mace. Looking forward to that. Honestly, we weren't planning on doing more than an hour of Predators talk, but the phone lines have been jammed, and so have so has the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. So we're going to continue it for just a little bit longer. But I want to go back to the conversation, Willie, you were having with Matt, also Matt from the 757, wonderful area code, I should always point out. A lot of good, smart hockey fans come from the 757, yours truly included. Some, only some. Just me and Matt, just kidding. But he is referencing a story that I wrote at the end of the 2022 season, which I found during the break. The headline of the story was "The Predators won't get better until they allow themselves to get worse." And that was me arguing at that time that the competitive transition, the competitive rebuild, whatever the term was that David Poile coined, and I think came to regret because we all threw it back in his face when the team was struggling. I just didn't think that was a way to win a championship. And I thought that the Predators, after so many years of giving it a try to win and going all in, it didn't work. They needed to take a step back. And Willie, I hear what you're saying about the Blackhawks. As you mentioned, the Blackhawks fired their coach, Luke Richardson, yesterday. It has not gone well. They have not made the playoffs, the actual playoffs, since the Predators swept them out of the playoffs in 2017. It has not gone well for the Blackhawks. I think what Matt's point was, and I think the team that typified this is the team that won the Stanley Cup when I wrote that story, the Colorado Avalanche. The Colorado Avalanche went through some lean years, several lean years, but it helped them get Cale Makar. It helped get them Nathan McKinnon. It helped get them Mikko Rantanen and Gabriel Landeskog. And those players, those top line players, were the reason why the Avalanche won the Stanley Cup. Willie, you will remember this as well as I do. When the Predators beat the Avalanche in the playoffs in 2018, when they were the President's Trophy winners, the Avalanche gave them a series. And I remember watching that series, even after the Predators eliminated the Avalanche in, I believe, 6 games. I thought, that Avalanche team is on the rise. That team is going to be a force to be reckoned with for years to come. And it ultimately has been. So I hear what Matt is saying, that, look, the Predators may not have a choice. I mean, with how poorly this season is going, they may be in such a deep hole that they are playing for lottery odds as opposed to a playoff spot.
Well, I think that's kind of ironic, because that could end up happening this year. You just have a year where nothing goes right. You get a high first-round pick. But let's not forget that what they never did was mortgage the future. They have
That's true.
accumulated a lot of assets. They haven't traded their first-round pick since 2018. And they didn't trade it before that for a number of years. So they've got a lot of guys that they have attempted anyway. We can go back through all the first round picks, right? They haven't hit on a home run in a long time in the draft, which is something that they are in need of. They need some of these guys that they pick to turn into game-changing kind of players, right, in the next few years. That's important. And they may have an opportunity to be in the lottery this year, which would be nice. I'll give you an interesting part of their history. In 2013, which was a shortened season because of a lockout, the Predators cratered. They had been a playoff team that had won playoff rounds in back-to-back years. They had made the playoffs 3 straight years. It was the height of an up-and-coming Pekka Rinne and 2 emerging superstars on the blue line, Shea Weber and Ryan Suter. And the rest of their team was okay, right? They had a good rest of the team, but those 3 guys were the anchor, and they won playoff series for the first time, right? Even beating the Red Wings in 2012. The next year, they sort of fell off a cliff. Ryan Suter left for free agency. Shea Weber had the whole offer sheet thing that was awkward. It sort of was the beginning of, oh, what the heck happened here? Pekka Rinne started to have the injury. Everybody else got hurt, and they sunk all the way, and they got the 4th pick, and they got Seth Jones, which they turned into Ryan Johansson. And then very quickly, after another year where Pekka Rinne got hurt, then they had the Peter Laviolette run, which was still the best run that they've ever had. So there's a lot of in-betweens to where you have to do the full send, break it down to the wood, and start over. Because I think if you look at what's happening in Anaheim, Ottawa, Buffalo, Chicago,
Detroit,
it is not as easy as you think to just say, well, let's just get the first pick in the draft a couple years. It's hard. I do not subscribe for that. And in turn for that, like what the caller said that disappointed me was, for a guy that goes to all the games and clearly watches intently, are we taking for granted when you do have the great moments, a 16-0-2 run, every game is relevant during the year? I mean, spending 7 or 8 years of basically like how hard have these 26 games been to watch for a Predator fan? Hard. Not used to this, right? This is the team. I have not seen a team struggle like this team has struggled for a long, long time. So let's not take for granted that, no, they haven't won the Stanley Cup. And yeah, they haven't had as many playoff runs as everybody would like, but they have played relevant hockey and winning hockey. Let's give them credit for that. That's a lot more fun than watching a team finish 30th or 31st for about 7 straight years.
And the other thing missing, by the way, and then we'll get to your calls at 615-737-1025. The other thing, of course, is the Blackhawks won 3 Stanley Cups in 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
So you can live with the lean years when you have championship banners, which the Blackhawks do. The Kings, who won 2 cups in 3 years in 2012 and 2014, they underwent some lean years, but they had those cups to fall back on. Daryl is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Daryl, thank you for waiting. Please go ahead.
Hey guys, how you doing today?
Good, thank you.
Good.
Real quick, I want to get you guys give my thought and get you and Willie's thoughts on what I'm getting ready to say. I'm a Florida Panthers fan, and the year that Quenneville got let go because of his Chicago debacle, Brunette came in and took over a team that actually won the President's Cup, and then I think we got swept by Tampa in the first round that year. But that
second
team,
round, they won the first round against the Capitals, and then lost to Tampa in the second round.
Oh, got you. I guess chemistry is this is the word I'm thinking of when it comes to Brunette. The big complaint from Panthers fans, and we all know he wasn't asked to come back, because the team had a lot of chemistry that year with Huberdeau and Barkov and et cetera. But the big complaint about Brunette wasn't the regular season. It was him trying to make decisions or not making decisions. It may have been because of inexperience. I don't know. Was his inability to balance lines and find chemistry with that team. And I think that's basically why the Panthers didn't have him back. Now, he's a nice guy. He's a great guy. And I know he knows his X's and O's. But when it comes down to crunch time, when it came to crunch time that year, he didn't seem to be able to make the decisions that he needed to make. In playoffs, we all know that playoffs is defense first. He kept that offense first mentality, and that like you said, Willie, they crashed in the second round. So my argument is, I know Brunette's a good coach, and he has records speak, as far as wins and losses, speaks for itself. But that's I guess chemistry and his indecision, his either inability to make decisions, finding chemistry at crunch time, or his refusal to. I don't know, but that's just how I see it. That's just my take on it. I'll hang up and listen.
Thank you, Daryl. Willie, please feel free to take that one if you like.
Well, I didn't follow the Panthers every game, but they won the President's Trophy. I think the chemistry was pretty good, and it's not like they flopped in the first round. They did beat a pretty good Washington team in the first round with Ovechkin and Peter Laviolette and those guys. So that wasn't. Let's give them that. And then they lost to a team that went to 3 straight Stanley Cup Finals and won 2. So they lost to one of the best teams of the salary cap era. So we're putting everything. You're judging Andrew Brunette's coaching career on 4 games, and he did get a rap on that, right? That was the narrative. What the caller said was the narrative, and maybe used as to why they went with Paul Maurice instead of Andrew Brunette as the permanent coach. after that season, but he was nominated for the Jack Adams. So let's give him that. Every coach has got things that they emphasize, things that they don't. I don't know that there's such thing as a perfect coach. Like that there's always strengths and weaknesses in coaches. I think Andrew Brunette is an incredible hockey mind. He's a savant that can tell you so much about the game. But man, he can't figure this one out. And nobody, everybody on that team is just completely puzzled as to why it's gotten to this point.
If that was, say that was one of the underlying reasons why the Florida Panthers chose not to bring him back. And now, Willie, you're seeing sort of the same sort of MO. Him not, and it started early on. This is not something that started like 2 or 3 games ago, and he can't, the lines just can't, figure themselves out. This is something that they've been struggling with since the beginning of the season. So if that was a narrative in Florida, then maybe the narrative is not too far from the truth, because he's still trying to find lines that can click, even though you have players that can score goals. We all know that. You went out and you paid handsomely for them. But for some strange reason, you haven't been able to get that chemistry or put a line together that can give you that consistent winning chemistry that you're going to need.
And I would, the tough part about that is I thought the chemistry was great last year with Andrew Brunette. So, it's hard to figure out why these things kind of happen. It is very, very, it's a maddening game where I think football is a little bit more of just, and basketball too. If you've got the horses, you're going to win. I think sometimes baseball and hockey have a little bit of, when you have a hitting slump or a scoring slump, you just can't figure out what you're doing wrong. Like how do I get out of this? It's crazy. Like Aaron Judge is a great example for baseball, where his first month he was getting booed, and he ended up having a unanimous MVP vote. And then in the postseason, he couldn't buy a hit. Right? They were all over him. And when they lost the World Series, he basically did nothing. He dropped a fly ball. Like, how does that happen? I don't know, but it happens more in baseball. Like, that would never have happened to Michael Jordan in basketball. It's a different type of game, I think, where there's a little bit more randomness to it, hockey and baseball. So I don't know. That's what I think makes it very tough on the coaches for hockey in particular, when you just can't figure out why a guy can't put the puck in the net through all those bodies. Sometimes you look and everything's going in. You're like, how did that go in? How did this go in? There's a million people standing in front of the net. There's nothing to shoot out, and yet it went in. Well, and other times you're thinking nobody could ever score. How come they can't get a shot through?
Well, I mean, if you're comparing it to last year, especially the second half of the season, there was no expectations. So I know, as a former athlete, when there's no expectations, some guys tend to just play freely and they can just go, and it's like, wow, okay, I didn't see that coming. But they're playing without this expectation or this sort of weight on their back. They're able to just play freely. But then you see some, when the expectations is there, as it has been for the Nashville Predators, sometimes you can't, find whatever you need to find to get yourself into that rhythm. Like, listen, they all knew, everybody in Nashville, especially in that organization, they knew when you brought those 3 guys in and you re-signed UC Saros to a huge contract, what the expectations were going to be. The expectations were through the roof. Now, maybe they didn't anticipate the chemistry being what it is and them not being able to find chemistry consistently, but everybody knew what the expectations were coming into this season. And maybe, just maybe, sometimes when that expectation is so large, you're pressing a little bit too much on all ends, whether it be a head coach, a GM, or just the players.
And one thing I want to add before we get to our next caller, Derek, to come off of that, it's not like the players they brought in don't know how to handle expectations. Yeah. Steven Stamkos knows how to handle expectations. Ryan O'Reilly knows how to handle expectations.
Right.
Jonathan Marchessault, Forsberg, Yossi, they've played long playoff runs. O'Reilly and Marchessault have been playoff MVPs. Steven Stamkos has won multiple championships. That's the other part about it that's confounding, is that these are players that know how to handle expectations. Tristan is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Tristan, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey, okay, one thing or several things, like how old are these players? That's one thing, because your body is going to break down. Like, I'm 34. Like, if I continue playing, like, I stopped in high school football playing football in high school because I am not a college football player. Like, your body breaks down, like, in speed. Like, if you're young, you're going to have tons of speed. That's where the Predators are missing. Like, Hal Gill, we don't have like a Hal Gill that's like an enforcer on the team. Like, you don't have that. Eddie George, like on Derek Mason's team, was that kind of like leader just by having a commanding voice, and he's now a head coach of TSU football. So we kind of don't have that voice in the locker room, like somebody that is emotional and can just like get this team. We have the coach. We just don't have that voice like that can say, this is our time. And so, yes, I'll let you talk about that.
Tristan, thank you for calling. Now, I may not be recalling this correctly, but I believe Tristan called in a couple of weeks ago and said that the Predators should strip Roman Josi of the captaincy. So that call was along similar lines. Now, let me say this about the conditioning part.
Mhm.
We know that the Predators acquired older players in relation to their playing careers. But Steven Stamkos may be, what is he, 34, Willie? Steven Stamkos might be 34 years old. I'm 35 years old. Steven Stamkos is in prime physical condition. I'm not worried about his conditioning now. Will he get slower as he ages? Absolutely. It's just, as Derek knows full well, Father Time is undefeated. But I am not concerned about their conditioning level or their bodies breaking down. I know Steven Stamkos, the injuries that Steven Stamkos has dealt with in his career have been pretty significant. But other than that, he has consistently been in the lineup for either the Lightning or the Predators. So, but like this idea, Derek, that the Predators don't have these voices. Well, we're not in the dressing room.
What happened to the term serial winners, right? These are guys that have won a lot. Like, I don't buy that theory there.
I don't either.
They've got guys that have been captains on championship teams in there. I don't think that's the issue.
And I think we actually said this the last time, Derek, that Tristan called in. And I don't mean to pick on Tristan. We appreciate him calling in. But I do think that there is this antiquated idea that you're not a good leader unless you are willing to scream and yell. Now, is there a time to scream and yell? Absolutely. But this idea that the best leaders are the ones that get in their teammates' faces and call into question their commitment and all of those things. Is there a time and a place for that when the pressure's on? Absolutely. And you know that full well. But just because I'll bring up Roman Josi again. Just because Roman Josi presents himself as a mild-mannered guy does not mean that he's not saying the hard things, does not mean that he's not a good leader. I just think, Derek, that sports fans have this idea, this old-fashioned idea that you're not a good leader unless you're screaming and yelling.
Well, the reality of it is this. More leaders are more quiet than anything when it comes to sports. That's the reality. They're only showing you a snippet of a few guys in certain instances or certain moments. But I've played with these guys, whether it be Eddie George, Steve McNair, Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, Terrell Suggs, guys that were considered leaders on this team. Brad, all these guys that were considered leaders, they weren't always vocal and they were not always in your face. What you would see is snippets of moments, but these guys wasn't every week. If we lost, they wasn't screaming and yelling. Or if we had a losing streak for 2 weeks, 2-3 weeks, they wasn't screaming and yelling.
Ray Lewis was the intense.
Exactly.
Individual.
So I think people get this false sense of, as many people do, when it comes to things that are on social media, and they just see these snapshots of people yelling and screaming. That's one time out of probably 600 times So don't mistake that for, oh, every guy or girl should be that way. More times than not, everybody's like a Steve McNair. Everybody's like a Peyton Manning, where I don't need to yell and scream. I lead by example. If I got something to say to you, I'm going to say it directly to you, and we're going to be done with it. But I'm not going to scream and yell. You're going to have it every once in a while. And like you said, Adam, every once in a while, it does need to happen, or it may need to happen, or the moment may call for that. But to yell and scream to get people's attention, I don't think he has to do that. Now, every once in a while, he may do that in the confines of the locker room, but I don't see him doing that on the ice. I see him leading by example or pulling guys to the side and talking to them or talking as a group. But just because he doesn't yell doesn't mean he's not a leader.
615-737.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
I
Billy.
don't think it's the problem. If
Yeah.
I could boil it down to one thing, Adam, is we sort of cut this off for the day, right? Because we're going to ask D Mace, we're going to do other things on the show, but this will be a theme that's running for a while. I still think if you had to start listing where the problems start, I do think it starts at the lack of production at center. I think that's where you start. Everything else is in there. I think we've hit a lot of it, but I think the central fault right now, they've got to get more production down the middle.
615-737-1025. Excellent conversation, everybody. As I said, we weren't planning on doing an hour plus of Predators talk, but excellent calls, excellent texts. And now it's time for Ask D-Mace. So get your questions in now. 615-737-1025. You can call, you can text on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Ask D-Mace. Coming up next, Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025, 1063, The Game.
Okay, let's talk Lee Company. The next chapter in this Predator novel is tomorrow against Ottawa. And Lee Company will be part of our sponsorship package for our radio coverage with Max Hurst and Hal Gill. Looking forward to that. Lee Company also has you covered. Now, it's really cold here in Ottawa, and I'm told it's pretty cold back in Nashville. So we're getting into those days where you need the heating unit to be working efficiently. And if you've been smart and listening to me, you've already got the home maintenance plan from Lee Company. They give you the annual checkups. They will have already checked your heating unit to make sure it's running properly. And they'll be checking in the spring that your air conditioning unit is working properly. They'll also check your plumbing and electrical systems to find those little problems before they become big problems and crises when it's really extreme. But hey, if you do have a maintenance problem, Lee Company's got you covered. All you got to do for any of this is keep this top of mind. 615-567-1000 or the website leecompany.com. In service since 1944 in our listening area. leecompany.com, 615-567-1000. Lee Company, proud sponsor, Nashville Predators.
He played 15 years in the NFL.
Quick throw. Touchdown, Derek Mason.
He had over 12,000 receiving yards.
Midfield, and there he goes. 80 yards for the touchdown.
And now you can ask him anything. Have a question about football or life? Now's your time to ask D-Mace.
We'll welcome you in.
Now, D-Mace. On 102.5 and 106.3, The Game and the Game Nashville app.
It's time to ask D-Mace on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. It's time to ask D-Mace, so get your questions in now at 615-737-1025. Okay, we have to start with this one. We did talk about this yesterday, Derek. Willie was not with us, so he may have missed this.
Okay.
Joey from Bellevue says, Derek, forgive me if this has been brought up. Did you catch the Choice is Yours segment with Robbie and Joe? They asked who within the station can change a car battery, change a tire, and a headlight bulb in their cars. What's your take? It was hilarious. They said they believe Willie could do all three. They believe you could as well, but would just pay someone to do it for you. And they had no faith in Adam.
Well, we did discuss that one yesterday. And Adam basically...
I admitted it. I can't do any of them.
Yes.
I can't do any of them. Now, Willie, can you do all three?
Okay, give me the three again.
So
One
the
of
question
changing a
was,
tire.
the question from Robbie was, who at our station could do the following three things? Change a tire, replace a car battery, and change a broken headlight bulb.
Okay, I'm going to give myself a 2 for 3. Changing the battery, that is not, I am not doing that. I would not have confidence.
Willie, but
in
that's
that.
probably the easiest one to
I
do.
think so. I think that's the easiest one
Yeah.
of all of them.
It takes no energy, really. Just undo
Yeah,
it,
you just
take it
unplug
out,
the
and
thing.
put it in, and it's easy.
Okay, well, maybe I can be taught that. I have not done that.
Mhm.
I've definitely changed the headlight. I can do that. That's doable. The tire thing, I can do it, and I have done it. It's just
You just
I
don't
feel
want
like
to
it gets harder. There's more stuff now, like the bolts and stuff to keep people from easily being able to get the lug nuts loose and stuff.
Mhm.
I'm not very skilled at it. Like if I had to do it, I can. But man, I sure love when I've been really lucky when once or twice when I've blown out a tire that some nice person has appeared to say, "Can I help you out?" or something like that. I'm like, "Heck yeah, you can help me out."
As a matter of
Thank
fact, you
very
can do
much,
it.
sir. Come on out. Here's my jack. Here's the leather. Can you help me out? Come on.
Oh man.
Chase has chimed in and says, I have done all three, and I'm sure they said I couldn't do any of them. I can't remember what Robbie and Joe and Keezer said about Chase, but Chase says he can do all three. Now, Derek, you said yesterday that you can do all three.
Yes.
The answer from Robbie and Joe was that you could, but since you are a man of means, you wouldn't have to do it if you didn't want to.
Yeah, I would probably, unless I was just out somewhere and changing a tire. But to my knowledge, I don't have a spare tire. I don't have a spare tire in my car. So it's a run flat. So, I wouldn't have to change it. I would have to either drive to the dealership or drive to a tire place or just have somebody come and pick it up, which I did do. I had a blowout on the highway and somebody they had to come and pick up the car because I didn't have a tire. So, but I can do all three. But yeah, sometimes you just choose not to.
All right, here's the next question from Chuck, and I think this is Andrew Brunette related. There's been a lot of talk about the Predator system and whether he has the right players to run that system. And as we've also discussed, there have been some tweaks that they have made recently. And Willie, I actually sent you the clip from Sportsnet that Elliot Freeman was addressing with us yesterday, so you could take a look at that if you'd like. Chuck,
Yeah, I know. I have looked at it, and I'm going to send it to Hal Gill and Chris Mason too. We are going to do it because I brought this up to their attention too. We're going to start talking about this a little bit more on our broadcast, so it's a good thing just to try to define what these little tweaks are.
So, Derek, this is the question from Chuck. I'm a head coach, and I want to play fast. I have a choice of players. Lineup number 1 has Willie, Adam, and Jared. Lineup 2 has D-Mace, Chris Sanders, and Joe Rexrode. Is lineup number 1 or number 2 better to implement my fast play system? Before you answer that question, I just want to say this. I don't think Willie would be on the team with me and Jared. I think Willie would be on the team with Derek and Chris. Joe is not fast.
Yeah.
I'm not fast. I assume Jared isn't fast. But let's just use the lineup that they gave. Willie, me, and Jared versus you, Chris Sanders, and Joe Rexrode.
Well,
Which lineup is better to play my fast play system?
What's the fast play system?
What's the fast play system?
I don't know.
Is it? Are we playing hockey? Or are we playing football? Are we playing basketball? What are we doing here?
That's a very
because if we're
important
playing hockey, I tell you right now, I'm losing because I'm not an ice skater. Okay,
I'm not helping anybody in hockey.
Exactly. So it might be a wash.
I'm just getting
like
a laugh.
the Keystone Cops out there.
I'm just getting a laugh at, again, I assume Chuck's answering his own question by saying you and Chris being on the same team, but he includes Joe Rexrode.
Joe's dealing with a bad knee. He ain't running nowhere.
Joe can barely make it up the stairs.
Exactly.
Let alone run.
So I don't think he knew about that injury part. Joe didn't disclose his injury report prior to the question being asked.
Yeah, that's
Joe's just getting shots, taking shots, man.
Joe's taking shots.
Well, to be fair, Joe sometimes sets himself up.
Yeah,
he does. Yeah,
anything that happens is because of
So
Rexrode.
yes,
there you go.
Absolutely. All right, Eric is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Eric, let's hear your dad joke.
Yeah, I'm going to get to it in a minute, and also my SD mates. But one quick thing I wanted to say, guys. Today, I'm going to be at the Crocus and Green Hills ringing the bell for the Salvation Army from 5 to 6. So I just throwing that out there.
Excellent.
Okay, great.
Right. Okay, here's my dad joke, D Mace, and I told you last time, this is a 2-for-1 dad joke, so hope you like it. Okay, what type of restaurants do vampires hate?
Restaurants, vampires hate. The Olive Garden? I don't know.
No, steakhouses.
You see what he did there?
Steak houses.
Yeah.
Vampires don't
now,
like steaks.
Yeah. Now, here's the other part of the dad joke. What is a vampire's favorite restaurant?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Drac in the Box.
Okay.
I
like the first one better. I like the first one better.
Yeah. Well, both of these jokes I made up. So yeah, I just thought you liked. But here's my SD Mace question, and you guys may have already talked about this. I don't know. And that's last night's Detroit Green Bay game. Listen, I love Dan Campbell as a coach, but I just think he goes for it on fourth down too much because it's reckless. Luckily, it worked when, of course, you had Goff stumble when they're trying to hand off the ball. But that, to me, kind of reminded me of the Giants-Eagles game a number of years ago when Herm Edwards picked up the ball and ran in for a touchdown. That helped make Eagles make the playoffs. I just think at times when he does that, it's reckless, and everybody loves it, say it's great, and they admire him, chutzpah, for doing that, and his balls and all this type of stuff. But here's the thing. I just remember last year where twice he went for it against San Francisco. Didn't work. They lost the game. And, of course, fans found out where he lived, and they showed up at his house, and he had to move because of that. I think it's set up for Detroit best possible to get to Super Bowl and win it. Because if they don't this year, I think Green Bay is going to be better next year because I think they're kind of like Detroit of last year. It's just, you got to think of situational football, in my opinion, and about when to go for it and when it's smart not to because of the other teams like Kansas City, Buffalo, and Philadelphia. And just wanted to get you guys' thoughts on that. Guys, it's always good to talk to you. Y'all have a great weekend. We'll talk again soon.
You as well.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. Listen, I don't mind Dan Campbell and what he does because this is who he is. Everyone in that organization knows who he is. They know that, listen, you may go for it on 4th and 1 when you're already within field goal range and it's a tie game. You know that Dan Campbell will pull out, a play and go for it. So I think the team is used to it now. Now, when it comes to the playoffs, I think that's where the fan base would probably want him to be a little bit more conscious of, like you said, Eric, situational football. That's why the fan bases are so upset last year because it happened in the playoffs. Had it happened in the regular season, fan base wouldn't have been upset. Yeah, they would have probably, there would have been a few that would have been, what is he doing? But for the most part, the Lion fan base was like, they would have been like, listen, that's who he is. We love him as a coach. And the decisions that has made thus far has worked. But I do agree with Eric in regards to situations when you're in the playoff. Will you do that again next year, or would he have went for it last night if that was a playoff game? I don't think he would have went for it last night had that been a playoff game, unless he was probably on his third or fourth kicker. Now you can do that in a regular season game and it not hurt you nearly as much as it would in the playoffs. So I think under that circumstance last night, if that's a playoff game, 4-for-1 game tie, 40-something seconds left, and you're within field goal range, I don't think you go for it on fourth down.
Chuck, by the way, has responded. He presented the question about the teams playing fast. He goes, it can be any game you wish to play. My point was that even though Slow Joe was on their team, they would be the faster team.
Yeah.
That's fair.
But just because
he is underestimating my ability to elevate Adam and Jared. Just give me the ball.
Coach Willie's going to be coming out.
Man, unless they get the Willie, that 17, 18-year-old Willie, I don't think it's going to happen. You elevating Willie.
Yeah.
I know that Rex Road.
Willie in the 1990s.
Exactly. I'm on the back nine, man. I'm on the back nine.
Rex Road, like you've seen the movie Along Came Polly, right?
Yes.
Rex Road.
Yeah.
Rex Road is when Ben Stiller and Philip Seymour Hoffman are playing 2-on-2. Rex Road's the guy on the other team with the Rex specs. He's serious. Now, hopefully he doesn't take his shirt off and get all sweaty. But Rex Road takes no
The Rex
prisoners.
specs.
Rex will use the bows, man. That's what Rex will
The
do.
Rex specs, REX specs. The Rex specs. Rex Road takes pickup basketball seriously. And
I'm sure he does.
Something tells me Willie also does too. Willie is sharpening those elbows. I guarantee it.
First of all, Along Came Polly is a solid movie. It's kind of been lost in the shuffle, but I would say if that comes, that's a solid rewatchable movie. It holds up. But yeah, I'm kind of not playing pickup like I used to. But yeah, I used to play a pretty hardcore pickup game. I've gotten in some shouting matches on the pickup on the pickup circuit for sure.
Willie,
the concrete, the rules of the asphalt. That's what I like to call it when you go play pickup.
The one rule: no blood, no foul, and that's the game we will
No
play.
blood, no foul, and also always know the score. Because you are going to get a fight on what the score is at some point.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's 8-6. No, it's not 8-6. No, name your 8 points. Go back. No, Derek hit one. Adam hit one. I hit a 3. Right? No, it's 8-6. Our ball.
Ball up, man. Come on.
Check it.
Respect the call, man. Respect the call.
615-737-1025. Yesterday, a Titans coach made some comments that went, I wouldn't say viral on Twitter, but they definitely got passed around. But we never heard them. Now we're going to actually hear what this coach had to say. Coming up next, Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Zen Sports just picked the grand prize winner for November's big game sweepstakes, people. If you didn't win, I'm sorry. But for the winner, congratulations. But it's not over. It's a new month. And they're doing something else for the month of December. This time, instead of going to the big game for the pros, they're giving you a chance to go to the very first big game in the new college football tournament. So you have a chance to win and go to the big game in the college football tournament, people, with a grand prize of $10,000 cash and, get this, 2 tickets to the biggest college football game of 2025. Yes, the one right down the street in Atlanta, and the ability to earn entries on every bet you place in December. It doesn't get much better than this. If you don't win the grand prize, don't worry about it, okay? Don't worry. Don't be sad. You'll also have a shot to win one of 10 small prizes, which grants you $1,000 toward any college football game in 2025. So what are you waiting for? Head to zensports.com/sweepstakes for a full list of rules and earn $100 on no danger wagers for your first bet. That's Zen Sports, where betting just got better. And remember, gambling problems, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 years or older to bet here in Tennessee.
Ryan's talked a couple of times this year about examples of things he feels like he's done to adjust and change in his first year on the job. I'm curious, do you have examples of things that you've done to adjust in your first year as a coordinator? Just things that...
Are you talking about Ryan Stonehouse? I'm confused what you're... Oh, Brian, I thought you were saying Ryan Stonehouse. My bad. No, just technique, just, working with these guys, just making sure we're all on the same page, communicating on the same level at that point. But, just being confident in what I'm doing and making sure the guys there's clarity in everything that we're doing. Early in the year, you could probably say that I was assuming guys knew what they were doing. So I felt like I, have learned, how guys learn in certain situations, and, we're going to continue to grow and get better.
That was Colt Anderson, Titan special teams coach, yesterday. those comments in written form spread throughout social media yesterday. I assumed guys know what they were doing. We saw it during our show. We mentioned it, but we wanted to actually hear it because we wanted to hear the context of the question. We wanted to hear how we answered it. But as Willie is fond of saying, this is the perfect time for media consultant Willie to say, maybe
yes,
when you are answering this question, don't say you assumed that your players knew how to do something. I mean, it's just it's an inexperienced coaching staff in terms of the head coach, the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator, the special teams coach. I don't know how many interviews Cole Anderson gave previously. I know he played in the league, but even then, I don't know how many interviews he conducted, up until this point when he has to speak weekly. But Derek, now that you've heard those comments versus just seeing them tweeted, what is your response?
Oh yeah, you always got to know context. That's why, I'm glad that, we chose not to really get into it until we heard the audio tape and what was asked of him and how he sort of answered. First, I want to say is this: he's not media savvy. I guarantee you, he's just not one of those guys that have been in front of the media a lot. So when he's thrust, because that's part of the job. When you are a coordinator, whether the offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator, head coach, special teams coordinator, you're going to have your time in front of the microphone, in front of the media. And some guys are not comfortable with that. No matter how many times they do it, they rather just go out and do their job and, not have to answer any questions. So I'm going to give him a pass on, because he sounds nervous and everything else. But listening to him, I know what he means. See, this is the part where I think I can really give you an insight on this. And maybe y'all can just look at it from a different standpoint. He played in this league for a while, and I'm sure he cut his teeth in special teams, and he excelled in special teams so much so he's a special teams coordinator. And when you excel at something and you do it well, then ultimately you get the job, and you're explaining things in meetings. You're expecting guys to get it because this is your first opportunity to sit in front of a bunch of guys and be the leader of these men. And you're going over, because I guarantee you, these special teams meetings, especially at the beginning of the year, these things last about 45 minutes to an hour. Okay. So I'm sure he went over a lot of things. And when he makes that comment, he's making it from the standpoint of, okay, I went over all this stuff. Anybody got any questions? Anybody don't understand? And this is what this is what is being said in these rooms. I am telling you verbatim. Hey, we're going over punt coverage. All right, you got this guy. Protect this. All right, anybody got any questions? I'm going to go over some film. I'm going to show you what I want. Boom, boom, boom. Anybody got any questions before we move on? Raise your hand. Let me know. If you're feeling a little confused about something, let me know now. All right, nobody raises their hand. All right, I assume everybody got it. Let's move on to the next thing. So forth and so on. And then when you get out there on the field and practice, okay, everything seems to go the way that you explained it in the meeting room. But then some guys have a problem with not just taking it from the meeting room to practice, but actually taking it from practice to a game. And that's where you get all week I thought these guys had it. And then you get out there in the game and it's like, you don't have it. I assumed you did because we went over it for an hour. I asked if anybody had questions. I went over it again. We went over it out on the field. And somehow now you don't understand it. I assumed you did, So don't get on him because he said, I assumed they knew it. Just like parents. When we tell our kids something and we ask them, do you understand? They do you have any, objections to what I'm saying? Or don't you understand? And they don't say anything. You figure, okay, you got it. Because I asked you. And then you go out there and do opposite. It's like, I thought you had it. Now we got to come back in here. Now we got to go over it again. I believe that is what he meant. Okay, now, listen, you can take it for what you can take what I said with a grain of salt. You can say, Derek, you don't know a damn thing. You can say it, but I'm just telling you, I've been in those rooms for 15 years. I was a critical part of a special teams unit. I was coached by one of the best special teams coaches that was in the National Football League. So if he raises his hand and say, hey, listen, anybody got any questions? And everybody's sitting like, nah, we ain't got no questions, coach. Then you go out there on the practice field, because even sometimes you go out on the practice field and you do opposite of what the coach says. And the coach looking at you like, I asked you, did you have a question? Did you not understand it? Then you get out here on the practice field 20 minutes later and you don't do what I'm asking you? Like, seriously. So don't make too much of him saying, listen, I just assumed they had it. Please don't do that.
It's a classic example of out of context, as we suspected
Uh-huh.
yesterday, where if you just took that sentence, you would say, what is this guy talking about? What does he know? And they have the 32nd ranked special teams unit. So there is a sense that, hey, this coach doesn't know what he's doing. So you see a quote like that and everybody piles on, aha, see, he's a vegetable head. I've been telling you, he's incompetent. You know, it's they pile on because nothing has gone right. But if you listen to the quote, I have a similar take as you, D Mace. I heard him say this. It's like I'm the new 8th grade teacher, right, at a school, and I'm teaching math, and I'm coming in, and I'm assuming that in 7th grade, everybody in my class the year before has the multiplication tables memorized, right? So I start my lessons, and then I figure out Jared over here, my student, he was in a different school. He hadn't learned the multiplication tables. That wasn't taught in his school. And maybe 3 or 4 other kids, I find out too that that's the case. So I started my lesson plans assuming everybody had a baseline knowledge of what we need to teach to go to the next level. Like maybe, in high school and college, Colt Anderson assumed that these are things that you learned on special teams, some basic principles. So I'm starting with the next level. But then he realizes, I got to go back. I need to start from scratch. I can't assume these guys have been taught these things, so I need to start from square one. I think that's what he was saying. It's pretty simple when you listen to the whole conversation, if you're paying attention. If you're just trying to play gotcha and jump on a sentence and then tweet it out and say, aha, this guy's an idiot, then I don't think you're really seeing the whole picture.
615-737-1025. Coming up next, it is college football championship weekend. Which games will have the most impact on the final college football playoff rankings this weekend? We'll discuss that next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025, 1063, The Game. D-Mace, Fingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Bingen, sounding like I'm going through puberty here with my voice cracking. But such is life when it's cold and you have a cold. So I'll do the best. I'll do the best that I can.
You're trying your hardest. That's all we ask.
And you know who else is trying hard? All of the teams that are going to be playing in the championship weekend of college football. We've got some great games on tap. Of course, the SEC title game, Georgia and Texas. The Big Ten title game, Penn State and Oregon. And the ACC title game, Clemson and SMU. And we've mentioned this quite a bit this week. It feels like Clemson, if they can beat SMU is favored. The game, however, is in Charlotte, North Carolina, so it should be a heavy Clemson crowd. But if Clemson can defeat SMU on Saturday, perhaps Clemson will steal a bid from another team. But there were some interesting comments that I want to get into, and this doesn't just apply to SMU. It applies to all of the teams playing this weekend that have college football playoff aspirations. This is SMU head football coach Rhett Lashley on the ACC PM show talking about the stakes for his team as they prepare to take on Clemson in the ACC title game.
How maddening is it, though, that there continues to be this narrative out there that you have to win in order to ensure your spot? I mean, even Ward Manuel said on Tuesday, he was asked about the possibility of SMU, if you lose, dropping behind Alabama, and he couldn't guarantee anything about SMU. How do you feel about that as a coach?
You can only control what you can control. It's frustrating that there's narratives that drive anything. It's frustrating that it's not a little easier. I think to the majority of the world, this is pretty clear cut. If you're in the field going into championship weekend, you've earned that right. You should be in. Like there's literally no, you go through a Power 4 conference, you're in the field. The committee, we're very thankful they have rewarded us with the number 8 ranking, and they have said we belong in the field. So for anyone behind us to have any chance to move ahead of us that's not playing just doesn't make any sense. And so, but we can't control that. And we're going to put our faith and trust in the fact that we're going to do the right thing. We're not going to opt out of this weekend like we could to just be in. We're going to go play in the championship game. We want to compete for a championship. We believe in the integrity of college football. We want to compete against an incredible opponent like Clemson and compete for a championship. That's important to our kids. And for them to have the courage and the integrity to do that, we believe they should be rewarded regardless. Maybe our seed changes based on the outcome of the game, but we should be in. And we're going to believe that the committee will have integrity and do what's right there as well.
That was Rhett Lashley, SMU head football coach. And when I hear that, this idea, hey, we're not going to sit this one out. We're going to play because it's what we need to do. But the idea that these major programs, Derek and Willie, would even bring up the idea of, I don't know if I want to play in my conference championship game because it may be detrimental to our hopes in the college football playoff. That's an issue that I think they're going to have to rectify at some point.
Well, this is the issue that they brought upon themselves. It truly is. So, I mean, how they fix it, I don't know. But listen, I don't think any team in Lane Kiffin said it, I understand. And look where Lane is. Sometimes just keep your mouth closed when it comes to that stuff, because now you had an opportunity and you didn't take advantage of it. Lane Kiffin, you end up losing again, which puts you outside of the college football playoffs. But I don't think there's any team that would opt out of a championship game, a conference championship game. But I do agree with them from this standpoint, especially when you're talking 11-1 SMU. If they were a 2-loss team, made their conference championship game, then all bets are off. Because you going in, you at 9-3, because your conference probably wasn't as stacked or your strength of schedule wasn't one of the tops in the country, you going in as a 3-loss team shouldn't automatically put you into the college football playoffs. I think when you're at that stage, you should have to win. But SMU is not in that situation. They are a 11-1 team. So I do believe from that standpoint, you're 11-1 team. You should be in by virtue of making your championship game, regardless if you win or lose, because ultimately you'll just be a 2-loss team. So you were going to throw a 3-loss Alabama. You're going to fall so far behind that Clemson goes and you drop behind a 3-loss Alabama team, and you only got 2 losses and 1 loss was in your championship game. That one, it's not fair, but I know sports isn't fair, but it makes no sense.
And Willie, just to set the stage here, SMU is number 8 in the playoff rankings, but they're the 3rd seed because by virtue of winning the ACC. So they're 8th in the rankings, just 1 through 15, but they would be number 3 if they win the ACC. Alabama is number 11.
So they would have won. Hold on, Willie. They would have won their ACC regular season championship.
Yes.
Didn't win the.
They went 8-0 in the ACC.
So they were the number 1 team in the ACC. So if they lose in the actual championship game, that puts them out.
I mean, I don't understand.
Yeah,
I don't
understand
so,
that.
But
yeah. I don't
you
think
never
that
know.
should be the case. But like you said, you never know.
Right. I do see that happens a lot in sports. There's a narrative that gets built about an award for MVP or for the Cy Young or for the Jack Adams. There's a narrative that builds, and everybody's supposed to sort of follow in on the narrative, and then somebody's got to say, hold on, let's think about this, and then that can change the narrative. But in this case, the host of the show, I forget what her name is. I know Billy Packer's son, Mark Packer, was on that panel too, on that show where they were interviewing Lashley. But that's
Andrea Adelson, I believe.
Yeah, okay. So she asked the question about the narrative, but the quote that she cited was from the director of the committee, the head guy. So that's the guy that makes the decision. That's not a narrative from the media or anything. It basically warning that if SMU loses and they don't have an automatic bid, they're now thrown into a group of teams that are being considered for the at-large spots. And I do think it's a little precarious for SMU because when you say they're undefeated in their league, it's a 16-team league. So it's a weird thing because you don't play everybody. You only play about half the teams in your conference. They did not play Miami. They haven't played Clemson yet. They're going to play them on Saturday. They haven't played Syracuse. Right? So those are the top 3. Those are the top 4 teams in the conference.
SMU has 2 ranked wins this season. They won at Louisville. They were 22 at the time, 34-27. And Pittsburgh, they defeated at home 48-25 when Pittsburgh was 18th.
Pittsburgh's 3-5 and 7-5. So those are your wins. It's not a great schedule, right? Duke is a pretty good team. They beat Duke in overtime. I think Alabama fans would sit there and go, let's look at their schedule. Let's look at our schedule. If you're simply going to go by the 1-loss record, and Brett Lashley's philosophical point is well taken, that you shouldn't be penalized for losing in a championship game. But I think you're going to find that that's going to be a heck of a discussion. They may have to. If SMU wins, then more power to them. They don't have to worry about that. They have that under their control. Win the game on Saturday. You don't have to think about it. But I think if it comes down to SMU and Alabama, you got a heck of an argument for Alabama because also you're sitting there in the SEC. If you're Ole Miss, if you're South Carolina, why are we just accepting that Alabama is better than Ole Miss and South Carolina? This is how it works on the basketball committee every year.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll twist yourself, you'll find a guy contradicting himself because sometimes it shouldn't just go by you have a better record because you do have to look at that strength of schedule.
Yeah, I know you got to look at the strength of schedule. And I know in this situation in particular, when you start, looking at, Alabama compared to SMU and the strength of schedule, I think I read on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, they were ranking all the SEC teams, in their strength of schedule. And they said, I think no one was below 32 on that strength of schedule. And then they sort of correlated it with SMU and some other teams that strength of schedule are far below that. But listen, you can make that argument about several different teams, and you make that argument because it fits your narrative. Look at the teams each and every week, regardless of the strength of schedule. Look at their team each and every week. Are they playing good football? Are they playing consistent football? And if that is indeed the case, then they have earned, and I'm speaking of SMU, they have earned the right by winning their regular season ACC title. They have earned a right in a spot in this year's college football playoffs. And if they lose in the ACC championship, that shouldn't negate that, what they did prior to the conference playoff, the conference championship game. So if they lose, I think they still should be in. If they win, obviously they're going to be in, and Clemson to be out. It just seems
Clemson
to
will
me,
be out, but Alabama will be out. That's the thing. If Clemson wins, they're automatically in, right?
Yeah.
So then it's SMU versus Bama in theory, right? Because Bama, they've already chosen, and they have said that.
But if
among the
Clemson
teams
loses,
that
then
aren't
Alabama's
playing-
not out, are they?
No, if Clemson's in a win and you're in situation. If Clemson
Right.
does not win the ACC, they're out.
That's what I'm saying. Then
Yeah,
Alabama's
and
still
then
in.
Bama should be fine
Yes.
if that happens. But I think the scenario is if Clemson wins, and it's kind of a toss-up game, right? Just like Adam said, Clemson's going to have great fans. Clemson, has the track record, recruiting and all that stuff. Who knows? I'm hoping SMU is for real and wins, because I like when the upstart gets in there. I'd love to see that. And
But
not
okay.
the same old in there. But if Clemson wins, you're basically going to compare SMU to Alabama for that last spot. That's at least how it looks from the committee's standpoint. So which one would you take?
I mean, listen, if I've seen both teams, I don't think Alabama is one of the top 12, 13 teams in the country. And I've watched them, and I know they've beaten, Georgia. I get that, but they had to throw basically a Hail Mary at the end to win that game, because Georgia had came back and took the lead. So I understand they got some good victories, but they got some bad losses too. Okay, let's not sit here, and I'm not saying you, Willie, but let's not sit here and think this is the Alabama team of last year or even the year before that. This is
agree.
not a good team, and to me, SMU, whether you win or lose, but in this scenario, in this situation, if they lose, I don't think they should be out.
I agree. I think
Just because they have a better record, or you think they're better than Alabama.
For me, I think I just don't think Alabama's earned the right to be in this year's college football playoffs.
But what has SMU done?
SMU has won their in-season conference. They won their regular season conference, didn't lose a game in conference play, and then they go on and say if they lose to Clemson by 3 points, Clemson got better as the year went on. And if I only lose to them by 3 points, isn't that what we're saying? Because you didn't dock Alabama for getting blown out of the water by a bad Oklahoma team.
Right. This is where it gets subjective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I can come back and say, all right, let's look at who they beat.
Yeah, they hadn't beat anybody. I get it. I give you that.
They really haven't beaten anybody with any weight.
I just don't love the idea of teams making it to their conference championship game, losing, and then being penalized for it.
That's where it really gets sticky. That's where it really gets
that.
sticky. That was Lashley's point, right,
Mm-hmm.
Adam? Is he was saying, why would you penalize it? Because it's logical.
Mm-hmm.
He kept using integrity. You said you're not going to penalize teams for making the championship game. But I don't think they're going to have any choice but to look at that way.
They set it up.
They
set all of this up because of last year, because of what happened with last year with Florida State. This is all a setup for this year. I'm not saying they did it on purpose, but I'm just saying if you look back at last year, they left Florida State out, even though Florida State won their regular season tournament, and then I think they won the ACC championship, and you still left them out because they didn't have their quarterback and maybe a couple other players. That shouldn't negate what they did during the season, but it did.
Right. Boise State is going to get a bye if they win. If they lose, they're not going to be in there. So they lost in the championship game. They're getting penalized, right? So I think that's the reality for Lashley and SMU is you're going to get thrown into the pile of at-large teams. And so even though it stinks that you're going to get penalized for playing in a championship game, that's kind of what Boise State is, right?
Yeah.
What's different?
I think if Alabama were in the SEC title game, and if both teams lost, let's say SMU and Alabama
Mhm.
lost their conference championship games, then if you want to look at them extra closely, I think you can do that. But like SMU's coach said, I think integrity is the right word. I don't like the idea of a team making its conference championship game, and we can quibble with the schedule.
Mhm.
You have to you play the teams on your schedule. We can quibble with that. But the idea of a team going 11-2, if we assume SMU loses, winning its conference, although it's not as good of a conference, and being penalized for that, it just doesn't sit right with me. But we'll continue this conversation on the other side. 615-737-1025. What are your thoughts on college football championship weekend? Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game.
You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge.
D-Mace, Ving and Adonic, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, talking college football championship weekend. I have some sad news to pass along. According to ESPN, Bevo will be unable to attend the SEC title game in Atlanta. There's no room for
I'm
Bevo.
so upset.
There's no room for Bevo.
Why? We know why.
Well, we saw.
That's true.
We do know what happens when Bevo and Uga are in the same room.
They're not friends.
They're not friends. The reason
That's a big reason.
Yes, the
And then
reason
he's also conducting an investigation of all of the Texas fans for throwing the water bottles onto the field.
That they didn't find nobody that actually
They
threw
didn't
them on
find
the field.
anybody.
Yeah.
according to ESPN, Bevo, who weighs more than 1,700 pounds with a horn span of 58 inches. I've never heard that before. A horn span.
Man.
There's no room in Atlanta. Although I have seen circulating a change.org petition with 6,000 signatures urging Greg Sankey to reverse the decision to allow Bevo to the SEC title.
He can be outside.
Hold on. So when Bevo, so don't they have a big enough trailer they could put Bevo in? Because I'm sure that's how they transport these cattle and these, these longhorns.
I'm pretty sure they do. But,
yeah. So what's the big deal? Just put him in one of those. And I'm sure maybe it's his age where they don't want to put him in that confined space for that long. I get that part. But if you want Bevo there that bad, then
you can keep him outside.
Yeah, or find a nice big trailer, decorated it inside all nice, plush. Get somebody to ride in the back with them, and make the trek from Texas to Atlanta. I know it's a long trek, but make it. Yeah.
Did I mention he has a horn span of 58 inches?
Yeah, you can find
They have a trailer that
that wide.
Yeah.
Yes, you can find a trailer that wide.
Yeah. Ugh. Anyway, so Tyler on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHunting.com, he said, so to play devil's advocate, there has to be some sort of information gleaned from the conference championship games that have to matter. If you win a chance to be in the conference championship, but don't play any of the best teams in your conference on the way to being there and then get stomped, are you really one of the best teams? I think the committee is in a tough spot with teams like Penn State and SMU because they've ranked them high without seeing them play another top opponent. And so they may get some information in their games this weekend that could contradict what they've thought they've known all year.
Well, Penn State played top teams. They lost by a couple points to
Well, they lost to Ohio State.
Yeah.
What other top team did they play?
Who else
They did not play Oregon. They're playing Oregon tomorrow. They did not play Oregon.
Tomorrow. Who else is on this? I don't have their schedule in my right.
I'll pull it up.
But when you talk a top team, what are you talking? A top 10 team? No, they haven't played a top 10 team.
Well, if they're playing a top 5 team, that James Franklin won't win.
Exactly.
So the only other ranked team they played, they beat Illinois when Illinois was ranked 19th, 21-7.
Okay, they beat Illinois.
They lost to Ohio State.
At one point in Ohio State.
That's it.
If you've watched Penn State play, that Penn State's a damn good team. Now, can they beat a top 5 team? We will know this weekend. But
history suggests it won't happen.
Yeah, history suggests that. But you can't look at Penn State and say they're not a good team. If you're just looking at the eye test and you watch them play, see, here's sort of the
that's where it gets tough too. The eye test can be a lot of things, and I tend to agree with you, but the eye test can be tough because that's a subjective thing. That's not really relying on data and criteria.
Yeah, it's not. But I mean, if I'm looking at, again, like looking at Alabama, if you are watching Alabama isn't one of the top 10 or 12 teams. Their name is, but actually them playing, because you don't know which Alabama team is going to show up. They are not one of the best top 12, top 11 teams in the country. They're just not, at least based on my opinion. And I've watched them more than 3 or 4 times this season. So
Tony is on our on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHunting.com. Tony, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey, fellas. Yeah, you talking about the Bevo-Uga rivalry, as I understand it, Bulldogs were bred there for a purpose of managing livestock and bulls particularly. You'll notice that in their build, they're very stout. And so by theoretically being able to launch onto the snout of livestock or a bull, a bulldog like Uga they were bred to control them. And I have to think that with all the years of Bulldogs and livestock we've had, I'm pretty sure Bevo knows exactly what Uga's all about. That's all I had.
Well, Tony,
That
thank
was
you
a
for
great
calling,
weekend.
Tony. I remember, what was it, the Sugar Bowl
Hey,
several
Bevo
years
must
ago?
didn't get that message.
Bevo, that Bevo. I don't know
Yeah.
if this Bevo is that Bevo because
That
this
Bevo
is-
was
I
me.
think this is Bevo 15. I think this is what this Bevo is. I don't know if that was Bevo 14 or 13, the one from back then, but that Bevo, I hear what Tony is saying.
Yeah.
He threw that evolutionary stuff out the window. He was charging at this Bulldog.
Hey, the ancestors came out on Bevo, and Bevo was like, I ain't having it. No, get away.
I know
from
who
me."
you are.
Exactly. But this Bevo, he may not know. I don't know.
But getting back to the what does it mean to get to the conference championship game? This is an interesting philosophical discussion.
And Will,
because
you
these
mentioned
leagues-
Boise State. I
Right.
think that Boise State, after Clemson, is the team that, in terms of playoff implications, the way that game goes. If Boise State wins, they've been top. They've had a bye basically throughout the entire college football playoff seeding. If they lose, that's it. They're done.
Yep, they're out. There's no question they're out. But it's so hard because when you say it's a Power 4 and you're in the championship game, well, Penn State. I was just looking at their schedule. They're 8-1 in the league, so they're in the championship game. They didn't play Oregon. They didn't play Indiana. They lost to Ohio State. They beat Illinois. That's the next. I'm going down the rankings. They didn't play Iowa. That's the next team in the league that finished 6-3. They didn't play Michigan, that finished 5-4 in the league. They barely won at Minnesota. Now that was on the road. Minnesota's not bad, but Minnesota finished 8th. But when you have 16 teams, it's so hard to judge because the strength of schedule is so different even within the league, right? Penn State was fortunate; they didn't play a lot of the top teams in the league. So it's an odd thing to say, well, let's just not penalize them for losing in the championship game. You do have to kind of look at the whole schedule, I think.
Well, the committee just should come out and say, listen, there's a requirement to have 4 SEC teams in. Just say it, because that's what you want to happen. Just say that. Come out and say it's a requirement of the committee that 4 SEC teams be in the college football playoff. Just say it, and then everybody, they'll fuss for a while, but then everybody
Now
will
we're
get
really
off your
getting
back.
into the conspiracy.
No, because that's the way it is. If it wasn't Alabama, it would have been another 3-loss team. It would have probably been Ole Miss.
Alabama played Georgia and beat them. They played Tennessee. They played South Carolina and beat them barely. So they played more of the top teams in the league than some of these other teams that we're comparing. SMU for sure. Like Alabama played a much more difficult schedule than SMU, and I do think it's going to come down to SMU and Alabama if Clemson beats SMU.
Listen, Alabama fans even tell you that this is not the Alabama that they're used to seeing.
No,
And
definitely
this
not.
Is not a
But
good
you still
team.
have to. No, they're not as good as they've been at their height for sure. But you still have to judge this Alabama team compared to everybody else that's trying to get that last spot in the at-large.
So no more is it if you're in a Power 4, just win your games, baby, and you're in. That they shouldn't even say that anymore because it's a lie. Unless you're in the SEC or possibly the Big Ten, but more importantly, the SEC.
Well, we saw Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark. So the Big 12 title game is Arizona State and Iowa State. And ahead of that game, he said, quote, "The selection committee continues to show time and time again that they are paying attention to logos versus resumes."
He's right.
That's true. And he's also, I think I've got this right. The other argument that's been made is if you're just looking at one-loss record, that should not be what it is. It's definitely not in college basketball. So why should it be in football? And I think the Big 12 is saying, why are we the 12 seed, the winner of our game? Let's just say it's Arizona State. Right now, what they've been saying is Boise State not only is ranked ahead of Arizona State, but Boise State is going to get a bye. Arizona State's going to have to win a road game against the 5 seed, the number one, the best at-large team, which could be Georgia, right? Could be. If they don't beat Texas. They got to go on the road, and then they got to. So he's saying, why is Boise State better than our league champion in the Big 12? Isn't the Big 12 a better league than the Mountain West? Why is Boise getting a bye over our league champion? That's a fair debate.
That's a good question.
I mean, am I wrong? Boise State is winning all their games in their league. They've been really good. But that league is let's not mistake that.
Okay,
with
so
the Big
here's another
12 or the- or
here's
the
let me give
SEC.
this.
Here's another quote from
Okay.
Brett Yormark, the commissioner of the Big 12. He said, strength of schedule should matter, and wins against Power 4 opponents should matter. 74% of the Big 12 wins were against Power 4 opponents this season. Meanwhile, the group of 5 is 11-80. In no way should a group of 5 champion be ranked above our champion.
Right. And not only that, they get a bye. They're going to get a bye if they win, Boise State.
Yeah, but this is the way they set up. Okay, so here's a question. Georgia. If they lose to Texas, should they be in? Because now they would have 3 losses.
They're going to be in. They're going to be in, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm
I don't think it's a question about.
I'm just
Georgia.
asking. So you would have
essentially
the
2-3
loss.
They played a brutal schedule.
I understand.
Georgia played a much tougher schedule.
I understand that. So it's going to get to a point. I'm telling you, it's going to be that. I am telling you, this is going to happen. You're going to have a 3-loss or potentially a 4-loss team get in the SEC, get into the college football playoff in the next 3 to 4 years. You will have a 4-loss SEC team, because if you're already starting the precedent of, if you're Alabama or Georgia or one of these top logo teams or one of these top teams, if you have 3 losses, you will still get in. Don't worry about it. Just get to your conference championship game with 3 losses, and if you lose, you still get in because you made it to your conference championship game. But if you're in any other conference, that's not going to fly.
Well, that's because it's the best conference, right?
I get being the best conference, but if you are a 3-loss, and listen, I've come to love the SEC because I've been living it forever. But I'm just calling a spade a spade. If they lose, then they should fall out. If Georgia loses, have 3 losses, then there should be a debate whether it's Georgia or Alabama.
Jason is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHunting.com. Jason, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey, man, right here, SEC, not trying to, rain on y'all's parade, but all you got to do is look back at TCU Georgia game, 65-7, and then look at Florida State last year, like undefeated, and then what they got beat in their bowl game.
I don't even count that bowl game. Yeah, I don't count that.
Well, how many FSU players did not play? in that bowl
I
game?
think all of them pulled out of that game. Yeah.
I think
Thanks,
Adam,
Jason.
myself, and Jared suited up for Florida State that day. Like they were on like the 7th string.
Yes,
because everybody left or opted out. All that. So that was a sham. I hate seeing that. That was a bummer.
They should just go ahead and make the playoffs for the SEC and the Big Ten. Just do that. Just do it, because that's what they want.
System.
Yeah, it is.
We do have, before we head to break, we do have an update on something we talked about earlier. The New York Rangers have traded Jacob Trouba to the Anaheim Ducks.
Ooh, they got rid of the contract.
Yes.
Wow.
So Jacob Trouba headed from the New York Rangers to the Anaheim Ducks.
Did they have to pay some of the salary?
No,
Did they take on some of the
all
salary?
Anaheim is taking the full freight.
Oh.
Did they get anything in return, or was it just thank you for taking the contract?
They received a conditional 4th-round pick, and I'm probably going to mispronounce this, Willie, so you can jump in. Urho Vakanainen.
It's close.
Serviceable,
right.
cheap defenseman. Yeah.
Yes.
Vakanainen. Yeah.
So a serviceable defenseman, depth defenseman, and a 4th-round pick for Jacob Trouba, and Anaheim will be paying his full salary. So no salary retained.
I'm actually surprised they got that much.
And thus ends Jacob Trouba's time as a member of the New York Rangers. But coming up next, it's time to close out the week by taking it to the bank. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan. It is time to take it to the bank. Brought to you by F&M Bank, customer community. F&M Bank, banking made easy on purpose. So last week, David, before we get to the review, last week we did this on Wednesday because we didn't have shows Thursday and Friday. We closed the Derek Mason loophole where he would make 4 picks, but then have all of these sub picks underneath it, which is how he got 18 points somehow. Ridiculous. But the ruling is final.
In fairness, I did say he would get 6 points if the Titans didn't win.
Fine.
Beat the Texans. So
but the loopholes have been closed, so Derek can't weasel his way into a win. But David, let's go through our selections from last week.
All right, boys. So it looks like we also have a new leader on the board again. Derek, you did not have a good week. You went another goose egg again.
Wow.
0 points?
0 points again.
How bad were his picks?
So the Titans, he said the Titans would beat Washington and
Wrong.
give up 4 sacks. They only gave up 2.
Dang it.
You also said the Ravens would beat Philly. That did not happen.
Wrong.
I'm very upset about that. And Henry would have 100 yards. That did not happen. And a touchdown. And that also did not happen. Also, the Pistons did not beat the Grizzlies.
Dang
Take
it.
that.
Dang it. I think I had a bad week.
You did.
0
So all these picks, so-
point 0.
So since Derek got more than 10 last week, since he got 0, does that mean he got negative 6 points this week?
Nope.
I really thought about it because he picked the Grizzlies would lose. But I'm a nice guy, so I would not do that to Derek. Now, Adam, you have 6 points from this week.
Okay.
So now you're the leader with 76 total points.
Back in the lead.
D-Mitch has 75. Now, Adam, your picks
Dang
were
it.
Titans would cover. That didn't happen.
It did not.
The Vols would cover. That did happen.
It was scary.
It was scary,
but they did cover.
but they covered. That's all that matters. And that all the home teams would win on Thanksgiving. They all did win on Thanksgiving.
That's right. By Thanksgiving Day, same day parlay. All
Ooh,
the
there we
home
go.
teams did win on Thanksgiving.
So that, again, that's a total of 6 points. Now, Willie, you picked the Lions minus 9.5. It was a lot closer than that. So obviously they didn't cover. The Titans.
Yeah,
would
I mean, they
cover.
were dominating the game.
They
Dominating.
were, but they didn't
Feeling
cover.
really good. And then it got very hairy. They
Bears
probably
decided
should have
to-
gone to overtime.
The Bears decided to have a good game, except at the final minutes. But we're not going to talk about that for all the Bears fans out there to give them some, yeah. to
It
not be
worked
upset
out for
anymore.
them. They fired the coach.
Yeah, they did, but yeah. You also said that the Titans would cover. That did not happen. But the Bills did cover on Sunday night, so that's where you got your 3 points, and with a total of 55 points.
Okay.
And how about you, David?
Now, I didn't have that great of a week.
Yeah.
Although I will say, NWI did score a touchdown. That's all I care about. But Jaw did not go for 4 because he didn't play. The Tigers did not win Maui, and the Ravens did not win.
You had a
Okay.
bad week. Just
All
like
right.
But I got 3 points.
All right.
50
So
points.
since I'm back in the lead, I will go first. Titans and Jaguars this weekend. Nick Folk will hit at least 3 field goals, including 1 from at least 50-plus yards. Nick Westbrook-Akine, who is a touchdown machine, he will catch a touchdown of at least 30 yards.
I like
So
that.
if it's a touchdown and it's 15 yards, that doesn't count. It has to be at least 30 yards. Also in the NFL, Kirk Cousins, he's been having a rough go of it. I think he has 6 interceptions and 0 touchdowns in his past 3 games. Falcons at Vikings this weekend, if I'm not mistaken. Kirk Cousins, 2 touchdown passes in his return to Minnesota.
2?
2. I'm giving him 2. 2 touchdown passes. He hasn't thrown one in a month, so he's going to make up for it by throwing 2 in his return to Minnesota. And in the Big Ten title game, Oregon and Penn State, James Franklin, he can't win games against good teams. I say Oregon wins by more than 1 possession. So I will say that Oregon wins by at least 9 points over Penn State.
All right. Let me go. I'm going to go also to the Oregon and Penn State, but I got Penn State winning that game. Outright
right.
winning. I have Georgia beating Texas. And the pros, I got Baker Mayfield and Evans hooking up for at least 1 touchdown. And then the Tennessee Titans front, Will Levis will throw for more than 220 yards.
I like those.
And he'll get sacked 3 times.
And he had to add one more. If they both don't hit, you don't get those points.
No, that's something separate.
I'm kidding.
That's something
All
separate.
right. Willie, you're up.
All right, I'm going to take Army plus the 5 in the American Athletic Championship.
Really
I
love his
would
troops.
love to see Army pull this off, but I don't know if they can win. But I like them as the dog plus 5 in the American Championship game. Tulane a little down because Tulane had a chance to maybe get into the discussion for the playoffs, but they lost to Memphis.
Go
and so
Tigers,
that
go,
kinda
baby.
Scrap that. Yeah, that scrap that. So I will say that Army will cover. I will take Georgia to defeat Texas for a second time. So give me Georgia plus the 2.5. And my pro pick, man, I'm a little conflicted on this one. I don't know what's going to happen between the Titans and the Jags. This one is a total toss-up to me. So I'm going to stay away from it, I think. And let's see. Give me the Chargers plus the 4 in Arrowhead against the Chiefs. Division rivals. It was a very tight game in L.A., and so I will take the Chargers as the road dog and just, again, going with the theory that the Chiefs play very tight games no matter who they're playing, and I think the Chargers are pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. So for me, I think so. For the Oregon versus Penn State game, there is a player on the Oregon team that is from Nashville. I covered him when he was in high school, named Jordan James. Shout out Jordan James. He went to BA and then transferred to Oakland and won 2 straight state championships. I think he goes for 2 touchdowns in the Big Ten championship game. I also think that I'm going to go in with the silly underdog pick. I selected Chris's pick this year. I think UNLV still wins. I'm going to go and make sure that I pick them to win again. I also think NWI will have, let's see. I think his stat line will be 60+ yards and 2 touchdowns. And then let me think. I think that's it. Yeah, that's all my picks.
All right. Well, Titans and Jags this weekend. It's certainly a football game. Neither team very good. Maybe it's competitive because both teams are bad. We'll see. Gentlemen, any final thoughts on what we should expect this weekend when the Titans host the Jaguars?
Oh boy. I seriously, I don't know what to expect. Now the Jags pass defense isn't good. So
it's bad. It's not
yeah.
it's not just
it's
not good.
horrendous.
It's bad.
Yeah, so I do expect the Tennessee Titans offense from a passing standpoint to look better than it did last week. But beyond that, I'm not sure, man, because just when I thought this team was going to look good, they showed me last week that they're not. So
Jacksonville does have, according to FTN Fantasy / the Old Football Outsiders, the 32nd ranked defense overall and the 32nd ranked pass defense in particular. They're a little bit better against the run. So this is a great opportunity for Will Levis to have a better statistical game. But I think we know that this league is full of surprises. So I'm not sure what to expect. I'm also very much looking forward to seeing what Mac Jones looks like. Can he, in these last few games, create a little bit of a market for himself? Because I think it's going to be very intriguing to see what happens at quarterback in the offseason with the growing sort of trend of the Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold reclamation projects. Who's going to be the next one? I think there'll be some teams looking for that guy.
It's sort of a catch-22 for Will Levis this weekend because, as you said, Willie, the Jaguars' pass defense is the worst in the NFL. So if Will Levis has a good game, some might say, well, look at who he played. He played the Jaguars. Right. Now, if he goes out and has a bad game, it's how could he not have a good game against these Jaguars?
I think I'd rather have a good game and have people say, well, it was against the Jaguars. I think that's a better alternative, right? Because he really will. I think that will have a lot of question marks going if he struggles against this defense.
Yes. So yes, according, as you mentioned, the DVOA stats, according to NFL Pro, the Jaguars' pass defense has given up a passer rating over the course of the season of 110.2, the highest passer rating against in the NFL, as well as the most yards per attempt allowed at 8.4. So this will give Will Levis the opportunity to maybe air it out a little bit, hopefully to Nick Westbrook-Akine for a touchdown of at least 30 yards, since that's what I just picked. But it'll be fascinating to see what happens in this game because, look, the Titans have been down bad. It could be worse. You could be the Jags. I would argue that the Jags are in a worse spot. But we shall see this weekend, Titans and Jaguars here at Nissan Stadium. Willie will be in Canada for a couple more days. The Predators look to break their 6-game losing streak tomorrow night against the Ottawa Senators. That game starts at 6, pregame at 5, right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. And then Willie will be back in town for like 2 days. So we look forward to seeing you for a hot second next week, Willie.
I will make my presence felt.
Absolutely. For us, that'll do it this week. Stillman and Company coming up next, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Be loved, love on your people. Have a wonderful, blessed, and safe weekend. Talk to you next week. Peace.